Hey people, Raz here. Tax season. Literally every American's least favorite season, right up there with allergy season, and of course, season 8 of Game of Thrones. Since I'm already in a numbers mood, let's talk about my favorite numbers, battlefield casualties. In the First World War, 70% of all direct battlefield casualties were caused by artillery fire. It was the leading cause of death, right up there with rifles and, of course, machine guns. The real killer of the war, however, was disease, but since that's not direct fire, I'm not counting it. But I digress. Today, I'll be reviewing the Illuminati. Seriously though, get ready. This story was way more than I bargained for. About a week ago, I began researching the history of the 155mm Field Howitzer and came across probably one of the most intriguing and morally dubious family dynasties I've ever seen. So, our story begins with the Schneider brothers in the year 1836. Adolf and Eugene Schneider took over an abandoned foundry in Le Creuset, France, and 2 years later created Schneider & C. They focused primarily on the industrial steel industry at the time. They were producing cannons along with other industrial steel products during the turbulent years after the French Revolution and Napoleonic Wars. Adolf had married into a rich Polish heiress's family and would use his new steel empire to fund his dream job of building trains.
I like trains.
Like not just trains, but literally the first trains France had ever seen. But no, he wasn't done yet. Then he worked with Francois Bourdon to make quite possibly one of the most influential steel hammers, which you can see here to the right, which not only revolutionized the steelworking industry, but also made him wonderfully rich and influential. In his life, he was an insurance agent, a banker, a supplies officer for the military, the deputy for Sagamine, a mayor, a member of the family council, the minister who built the fortifications around France, an iron baron, and a railroad tycoon. And then, at the age of 42, he was diagnosed with dead after falling off his horse. But enough about Adolf, let's talk about Eugene Schneider. Eugene Schneider was my spirit animal. He was more interested in things that go boom. He got to start selling guns to the French government. After his brother passed, he used his money and influence to build a railway empire, a shipmaking empire, became a captain of the steam industry, and held a ton of government positions, even being part of a coup d'etat which overthrew the government in 1851. By the end of his life, he had his finger in pretty much everything, and he even got his name on the corner of the Eiffel Tower. When he died in 1872, his son, Henri Schneider, went full swing into the cannon industry, producing many of the French government's cannons. He held a couple of political positions as well, founded a hospital, and got the company into electricity, but that's going to come up later. Eugene Schneider II was head of the biggest bank in France. He was one of the most powerful arms dealers in France, and was pretty much part of every labor and transportation union at the time. During World War I, the company produced submarines, pretty much every cannon the French army used, and even France's first tank. The Schneider dynasty lived on, with many of them becoming pilots, politicians, and captains of industry. The company kind of coasted until World War II. Many of its subsidiaries went on producing arms for the French government. One of these subsidiaries, Soma, gave us the S-35, which you'll see more of in the World War II series. Eventually, the company decided to get out of the steel, ships, and guns industry to focus all their efforts on electricity. Finally, in 1997, the company rebranded as Schneider Electric and focused their business strictly on security, networking, electronics, battery backups, and business intelligence solutions. Today, you've likely interacted with their products without even knowing it. Chances are, due to their marketplace diversity, one of your electronics at home is a Schneider product. Currently, the company boasts over 20,000 patents and inventions. You probably have a circuit breaker, or get your power managed by them, or your IT staff probably uses their battery backups to power your equipment. If your home draws energy from a nuclear power plant, chances are Schneider's SCADA software is what's controlling your energy. Even I kind of accidentally discovered that they've been producing the battery backups that our company's used for years. This is a really strange situation where this company and family almost feel like the Illuminati, because they're almost invisible, but have their hand in pretty much everything. They're also a huge part of France's history, so it's kind of weird that I haven't heard about them till now. Anyway, let's get on to the real subject of today's video, artillery. Artillery came in many shapes and forms in the First World War. The standard variants were infantry support, field artillery, mortars, howitzers, and siege guns. So let's go ahead and start off with infantry support. These were attachments on your gun or small artillery pieces light enough to be carried directly into the front lines to help support attacks or defend against enemy attacks. Typically, these were extremely small, lightweight, and would be very close to the front lines. Up next is field artillery. Normally, this was used as direct line-of-sight artillery. It was lighter weight and could be moved by horses. Typically, this was held very close to the front lines and supporting trenches flanking the main fire line. Usually it was used to stop enemy advances, take out tanks, or target bunkers and strongpoints along the enemy lines. Mortars came in two sizes. They had a variant that was lightweight, portable, and able to move close to the main defenses, and they have larger short-barrel cannons that were meant to hurl medium-sized charges at grid coordinates close to the enemy lines. Typically, these would be used to harass the enemy on the daily basis, or they were just meant to constantly be fired if a spotter saw movement in a particular grid coordinate. Howitzers are the bigger brother to the mortar. They were meant to be longer range and fired at steep angles. Typically, they would hurl massive explosive charges into direct grid coordinates. Usually, this was part of a creeping barrage or box barrage pattern where fire would be concentrated in an area to suppress enemy movement or soften enemy positions before an attack. The last variety were siege guns. These weren't used in very many situations in World War I. Typically, they were meant to hurl absolutely massive shells over long distances in order to harass enemy forts, cities, or strongpoints. Most famously, the Germans used a siege gun against Paris in 1917. The 155mm Schneider was a howitzer. During World War I, howitzers and mortars were mainly used due to the proximity and effectiveness of grid coordinate bombardment. In fact, you were nearly 2 times as likely to be hit by a shell than you were to be hit by direct enemy fire on an average day on the Western Front. That does not mean that machine guns were less effective. It just means by 1915 and 1916, most of the armies on the Western Front had learned the lessons and stopped charging directly into machine gun fire. Due to the machine gun's effectiveness, they mainly relied on creeping barrages and indirect fire methods to soften or destroy enemy positions before they engaged in a direct assault. This particular gun was used all over the Western Front and would become the standard French howitzer by the end of the war. It would see service in 19 different nations and fight all the way until 1945. It would be licensed to the degree that nobody knows the official count that were made. Some estimates predict there were between 3,000 and 7,000 before it stopped being produced in 1945. Anyways, on to the review. But first, let's see what gifts God King Cobi has provided for us today. This time we have a mixed drink, the famous French 75. This drink was a common beverage consumed by soldiers on leave in the city of Paris during World War I. This cocktail is a combination of gin, champagne, citrus, and sugar. The inspiration for the title was apparently a tribute to the Schneider 75mm howitzer that the French and American forces used throughout World War I. The gun was a renowned piece of machinery and praised for its accuracy and quickness, and the French 75 drink was said to have such a kick that it felt like you were being shelled by the famous weapon. Hilariously, Cobi also made a French 75 cannon. However, I refuse to buy it because it looks bad. Now, on to the review. At the end of the day, I have absolutely nothing bad to say about this model. This is going to be my first 10 out of 10 recommendation. In fact, I'm just going to shut up and give this thing a good spin so you can see how good it looks. It has everything. It has playability for kids, authenticity for collectors, it's built to perfect scale, and the details are staggeringly good. I've seen this gun in real life at the 1st Division Museum, and this model is almost perfect. It's easily moddable and looks great on a shelf. I have literally nothing bad to say about this model, and that is why I'm giving it a 10 out of 10. As always, thank you for watching. You are all truly wonderful. I have another bonus episode planned for next time, the 100mm howitzer. We've had a lot of fun this video discussing the history and just plain badassery of artillery, but now it's time to talk about the effects of artillery. Many, many brave people met their ends because of it. If it's okay with you, I'd like to take a moment to show you what these men endured. Night after night, week after week, month after month, for 4 hellish years.